This is Megan Vitale, Principal Transportation Planner at the Syracuse Metropolitan Transportation Council, or SMTC. Thanks for taking the time to learn about the SMTC and our Long-Range Transportation Plan. This presentation will provide an introduction to the SMTC and our function as an agency. I'll also talk about the purpose of the 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan, or LRTP, and the current update process. I'll review major components of the LRTP and highlight the updates that are included in the current draft. At the end of the presentation, I'll provide contact information so that you can give us your feedback on the draft LRTP update. The next few slides provide an overview of the SMTC. The SMTC is a Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. An MPO is a transportation policymaking and planning body made up of representatives of local, state, and federal government and transportation authorities. The MPO itself doesn't actually own any transportation facilities, but we provide a forum to bring together those entities that do run our transportation system. Every urban area in the United States with more than 50,000 people has an MPO. The Policy Committee is the designated MPO, and we'll see a list of those Policy Committee members in a few slides. The MPO is charged with the comprehensive, cooperative, and continuous transportation planning process for its metropolitan area. Our Metropolitan Planning Area, or MPA, includes all of Onondaga County, the town of Sullivan in Madison County, and the towns of West Monroe, Hastings, Schuylkill, and a small portion of the town of Granby in Oswego County. This is the area in which we conduct transportation planning studies and program federal capital transportation funds. Every MPO is made up of member agencies. Our member agencies are listed on this slide. These include local, county, state governments, and other entities that have a vested interest in our transportation system. Our staff, including our director, planners, and our analysts, take direction from the SMTC's member agencies. Every MPO is charged with comprehensive transportation planning. This means that we look at all modes of transportation, including transit, a road network, freight, walking, and bicycling within our metropolitan planning area. The transportation planning process is also required to be cooperative. This means that we coordinate with our federal, state, and local agencies to develop transportation plans and capital programs. And we provide an opportunity for citizens to participate in the transportation planning process. Transportation planning is also a continuous process, and this is represented in our three main products. Our regional transportation vision is articulated in our long-range transportation plan. We also maintain an annual work program of transportation planning studies. This is called our Unified Planning Work Program. Finally, we administer federal capital funding through our Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. The MPO process exists to examine the region's future and investment alternatives, facilitate collaboration of governments, other interested parties, and the public, and to prioritize transportation needs. This helps us invest funds appropriately to reflect the region's vision and balances our needs versus limited funding. The MPO process expresses the consensus of the community through member agencies and elected officials. The remainder of this presentation will discuss the 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan and the update process. Our current 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan was adopted in September of 2015. That plan was our first entirely new plan with new goals and objectives since 1995, although updates had been published in between. The new 2050 LRTP emphasized performance-based planning and included a system performance report for our transportation system, in accordance with the Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act, or MAP 21, which was the federal legislation that guided the surface transportation program at that time. Also in 2015, the SMTC published a Transportation Atlas as a companion to the LRTP. The atlas includes a wealth of local data on demographics, economics, and of course, various aspects of transportation. You can access the atlas on our website. The purpose statement for the LRTP remains unchanged. The plan is to guide the SMTC's member agencies in making transportation investment decisions over the next 30 years that support the planning goals of the region and local communities, contribute to the achievement of system performance goals, and advance regionally significant infrastructure projects. Federal regulations require that we update our LRTP every 5 years. The most recent rules for LRTPs come from the Fixing America's Surface Transportation, or FAST Act, which replaced MAP 21. Since the FAST Act was signed in December 2015, multiple federal rulemakings have been issued that specify requirements for performance measures and the LRTP's System Performance Report. These specifics were not available when we originally published our 2050 LRTP, so our updated plan includes some changes to comply with these rules. Since 2015, the SMTC has adopted multiple resolutions in support of the New York State Department of Transportation's performance measures and Centro's performance measures. These are reflected in the updated plan. For this update, we also reviewed additional regional and municipal plans that have been released since 2015 and incorporated information and recommendations from more recent SMTC studies. We also reviewed demographic and economic conditions and updated these in the LRTP as necessary. This slide details the notable changes in the LRTP update. Each chapter is available for download on our website. As already noted, the goals and objectives in Chapter 2 were modified only slightly to reflect the current federal legislation and additional regional and municipal plans. We also acknowledged progress that has been made on the regionally significant projects that were previously identified in the LRTP process. Demographic and economic data were updated where necessary, mostly in Chapter 3. Chapter 4 includes the required description of our transportation system and the System Performance Report. We incorporated new transportation options since 2015, such as bike sharing and transportation network companies, also known as ride sharing. Within the Future Conditions Assessment in Chapter 5, we updated our computer modeling to a base year of 2017 from the previous base year of 2014, using the available demographic and economic data. We also added a new section addressing emerging trends in transportation technology. The LRTP is required to include a financial plan, and this is included in Chapter 6. The list of transportation projects in Chapter 6 was updated with input from our member agencies. The Atlas is not being republished at this time. The Atlas used decennial census data extensively, so we will update the Atlas once the 2020 census data becomes available. The 4 regionally significant projects were identified in the 2015 LRTP, and these remain in the update. We have updated the text of the plan to reflect changes since 2015, such as the release of the I-81 Viaduct Project Preliminary Draft Environmental Impact Statement Draft Design Report, though the plan does not specify a preferred solution. Enhanced Transit was identified as a regionally significant project in 2015, but since then, the SMTC's Syracuse Metropolitan Area Regional Transit, or SMART study, was completed, which identified bus rapid transit and mixed traffic as the locally preferred alternative for enhanced transit in our region. The regional trail network has continued to expand, and we added updated information about the Empire State Trail, and an inland port was also identified as a regionally significant project. The update reflects the current plans for the expansion at the DeWitt Rail Yard. The Federal FAST Act describes 10 planning factors that every LRTP must address. This includes supporting economic vitality, safety and security, increasing accessibility and mobility, protecting the environment, enhancing connectivity between modes of transportation, efficient system management, preservation of our existing transportation facilities, resiliency and reliability, and enhancing travel and tourism. The FAST Act also articulates 7 national goals for the transportation system. The first 6 goals listed here are identified in our plan and are a primary organizing element around which we defined specific objectives. The SMTC itself does not build anything, so our LRTP does not address the goal of reduced project delivery delays. Federal legislation also defines rules for performance management. These rules specify the performance measures that must be used by state DOTs, MPOs, and transit agencies to assess the performance of the transportation system. Some of the specific rules regarding performance measures are new since the publication of our plan in 2015, so some minor changes were made in the wording of some of our objectives to better reflect these updated performance measure requirements. In 2015, the SMTC staff reviewed numerous regional and municipal plans to create a draft list of objectives within the framework of the national goals. These objectives were reviewed and accepted by the Study Advisory Committee and are documented in the existing 2050 LRTP. For this current update, we reviewed updated and new plans since 2015 and compared these to the existing objectives. The Study Advisory Committee agreed that, by and large, the goals and objectives for our LRTP should remain as written in 2015. As noted, minor modifications were made to reflect changes in the federal performance management requirements. The goals and objectives, along with regionally significant projects, are described in Chapter 2 of our plan. Transportation planning is an ongoing process, and public involvement is important to all the work that we do. The SMTC has conducted numerous studies since the LRTP was published in 2015. The results of these studies and the public feedback gathered during these studies all informed the creation of our LRTP update. Some of our more notable studies are indicated here, such as the SMART study, Centro Rider and Non-Rider surveys, and the WorkLink study, which focused on connecting people to jobs. Chapter 3 of the LRTP includes demographic and economic data for our region, which forms the basis of our planning. Much of the data in the 2015 plan and in the Atlas came from the 2010 decennial census. Since the 2020 census is taking place right now, we won't have new decennial census data for another few years. However, the census also releases a data set called the American Community Survey, which provides estimates for many demographic factors. When we compared the most recent 5-year ACS population estimate for our planning area to the 2010 decennial census number, we saw that there has been virtually no change in our total population. Also, other key indicators were all within a few percentage points of the data reported in 2010. Where available, Chapter 3 of the LRTP update includes new data, but by and large, the demographics of our region have not changed much in the past 5 years. The LRTP update includes some new economic data and points out new potential employment centers in our region. We have also added a section addressing travel and tourism. Chapter 4 of the LRTP includes a description of our transportation system and also includes the required System Performance Report. This new System Performance Report addresses all of the federally required performance measures that have been defined since 2015, and these are identified in individual tables throughout Chapter 4, along with the respective performance targets where applicable. When we were conducting outreach for the original 2015 LRTP, we received a lot of questions about how emerging technology, such as autonomous vehicles, would impact transportation planning. At that time, especially, there were still so many unanswered questions, and our focus was on creating new objectives and identifying regionally significant projects for our plan. The 2015 LRTP only briefly touched on these emerging technology concerns, but the update includes a new section within Chapter 5 that describes many of these emerging technologies and identifies relevant policy considerations, such as accessibility, data management, and impacts to vehicle miles traveled. The list of projects has been updated in this LRTP. For the short term, the first 5 years of the plan, the list is consistent with the SMTC's current Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, which is our capital program. For the next 10 years of the plan, the midterm years of 2025 through 2034, we worked with our member agencies to develop an anticipated list of projects. Inclusion in the financial analysis of the LRTP does not guarantee that a project will be funded. Each project must still eventually compete for federal funding through the SMTC's TIP process, but the list in the LRTP articulates a vision for the future based on the information we have available right now. Projects selected for inclusion on future TIPs will be evaluated based on the LRTP goals and objectives and weighed against other projects proposed during that TIP update cycle. Within the LRTP, maintenance includes any project that doesn't increase the capacity of the current transportation system. When we were creating the LRTP in 2015, all maintenance projects were lumped together by category, and only non-maintenance projects were listed individually. But this gives an undue importance to those non-maintenance projects when, in reality, many of the large projects in our region are just maintaining the system that we have, not expanding capacity. So the update lists the major maintenance projects in our region individually. These are the maintenance projects with a construction cost over $3 million. Listing the large maintenance projects individually in this LRTP update gives a more accurate picture of the importance of maintenance projects in our region. There are a lot of roads to pave and bridges to repair just to keep us moving. The chart here shows total anticipated spending by project category over the 30 years of the LRTP. The total project cost is expected to be over $3 billion. As you can see, most of the anticipated projects fall into the maintenance category, 66% in highway maintenance, including bridges and transportation systems management and operations technology, plus another 12% for transit maintenance. Only 21% of the total spending is expected to be for non-maintenance projects, which includes interchange improvements, road capacity enhancements, safety projects, and bicycle and pedestrian projects. One of the federal requirements for the LRTP is that the plan must show fiscal constraint. This means that we have to show that we can reasonably expect to fund the projects listed in the plan over the time frame of the plan. The LRTP cannot be a wish list. It must be grounded in fiscal reality. Although this analysis shows a surplus of $24.6 million, that figure represents only about 1% of the total revenues that we expect to have available for transportation projects over 30 years. So really, that is a fairly tight margin. However, the regulations do allow us to list some additional or illustrative projects in the plan, which we would fund if additional monies are identified in the future. These additional projects include the I-81 Viaduct project, a BRT system as identified in our SMART study, a reduction of off-peak transit headways, that is, increasing the frequency of buses on existing lines, and a new I-81 express bus route with park and ride locations. The costs for I-81 and the BRT system have been updated based on new studies since 2015. Additionally, we worked with our member agencies to develop a cost estimate to provide increased maintenance work in order to bring all roads and bridges in the region into a state of good repair over the next 10 years. That was estimated to cost an additional $2 billion. Our maintenance needs in the region are vast. The LRTP also lists some projects that have been discussed in our community and have been examined in previous studies, but those previous studies have recommended that these projects not move forward, generally because the costs substantially outweigh the benefits under current conditions. These include the idea of a western bypass for 481, a new I-81 interchange north of Route 31, an extension of the Baldwinsville bypass, and an extension or relocation of Route 290 in DeWitt and Manlius. At this time, additional consideration of these projects is not warranted. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn about the SMTC and our LRTP update. Please be sure to download the draft document and review the chapters in more detail. We welcome your feedback on the draft plan. Please be sure to submit your comments by September 2nd. You can submit comments through the form on our website, by emailing us at the address shown, or by mail. The LRTP will be adopted by the SMTC Policy Committee before the end of September. Thanks for listening.